Greetings and welcome back to Scriptures Unlocked. In the previous presentation, we looked at Genesis chapter 25, where we ended with Esau selling his birthright to Jacob for a pot of stew. This presentation will focus on Genesis chapter 26, which will be entitled The Life of Isaac. This presentation will cover 25 years of Isaac's life. And we know this because Genesis chapter 26 ends with Esau being 40 years old, which meant that Isaac was 100 years old. And in Genesis chapter 25, Isaac's father died when Isaac was 75 years old. So Genesis chapter 26 will cover 25 years of Isaac's life while he was living in the land of Canaan. So Genesis 26 covers the period of Isaac's life after Esau sold his birthright to Jacob up until Isaac was 100 years old. And it tells us here that Isaac settles in Gerar. And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. So right from the get-go, we are told that while Isaac was living in the promised land, there was another famine similar to the one that occurred in the days of Abraham. And this famine was recorded in Genesis 12, verse 10. And there was a famine in the land. And Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. So Isaac was about to make the same mistake by leaving the promised land and going down to Egypt. But God intervened and told Isaac the following. And Jehovah appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Why? Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So viewers, God appeared to Isaac and reaffirmed the Abrahamic covenant with all its attendant blessings to Isaac, which dissuaded him from going down to Egypt. So Genesis 26 verse 6 tells us that Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And Gerar occurs 10 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 1642. The name Gerar means a lodging place, and it's a Philistine town south of Gaza. So the king of Gerar was Abimelech, and this may not have been his proper name, but it could very well be a title for the kings of the Philistines at that time. And I'll explain why. Because Abraham also had an encounter with another Abimelech who was also king of Gerar in Genesis chapter 20 before Isaac was born. So Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And Abraham died at the age of 175 years old, which means that Isaac was 75 years old when his father died. So it is highly unlikely that the Abimelech who spoke to Abraham in Genesis 20 is the same person who was now meeting Isaac in Genesis 26. Because remember, at that time, Abimelech was king of Gerar when Abraham was living. And he took Sarah into his harem when Abraham told him that she was his sister. So this man, at the time, this Abimelech who Abraham met, was someone who was already married. He had wives. And this was before Isaac was born. And when Abraham died, Isaac was now 75 years old, which meant that if this was the same Abimelech, it meant that this Abimelech would have been close to or over 100 years old. So the name Abimelech, even though it is a proper name, may not have been the name of the king, but a title for the kings of the Philistines. In very much the same way that Pharaoh is not the name of the king of Egypt, but a title for the kings of Egypt. So this could well be a son of Abimelech who met Abraham in Genesis chapter 20. So on screen you can see the Hebrew script of Abimelech's name. It occurs 67 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It is Strong's H 40. It simply means Melech is father, or my father is king. He was a king of Gerar in Abraham's time, and we know that he's also the king of Gerar in Isaac's time. Another person by the name of Abimelech was also in David's time. And notice here it says, maybe title of Philistine kings. Because this king in David's time was called Achish. But in Psalm 34, it refers to him as Abimelech. And one of Gideon's sons was called Abimelech. And a priest, the son of Abiathar, was also called Abimelech. So Abimelech is a proper name for individuals, but in the case of the king of Gerar, it more than likely is a title for the kings of the Philistines. Genesis 26 verse 7 tells us this. And the men of the place asked him of his wife. And Isaac said, she is my sister, similar to what Abraham told the Abimelech that he met. For he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah. So Rebekah was beautiful, just as how Isaac's mother, Sarah, was beautiful. So like his father before him, Isaac also lied about the true nature of his relationship with Rebekah by hiding the fact that she was his wife. And it came to pass when he had been there a long time, so he was in Gerar for a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at the window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. So the king saw how playful Isaac and Rebekah were interacting. And he said to himself, this is not this man's sister. They are too cordial in a way that would suggest that she is his wife. And notice the word that is translated as sporting. It is Strong's H6711. It is the Hebrew word sahak. And incidentally, it is a part of Isaac's name. Isaac is called in Hebrew Yitzhak. And it comes from this same root word, sahak. Sahak occurs 13 times in scripture. It means to laugh. So Isaac and Rebekah were laughing together, to mock, to sport, or to play. It means to laugh outright in merriment, which is what Isaac and Rebekah were doing, or to scorn or to mock. By implication, to sport, to laugh, mock, play, or make sport. And Genesis 26 verse 9 says, and Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety, she is thy wife. And how saidst thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her. And Abimelech said, what is this that thou hast done unto us? What if the people might lightly have lied with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us? So even then, even though he told Abimelech that she was his sister, Abimelech and those people at that time valued marital relationship. He was saying to Isaac, one of my people could have taken your wife, whom you claim to be your sister, to be their wife, and they would have committed adultery because Rebekah is your wife and not your sister. So even back then, they honored the marriage covenant. This interaction between Isaac and Abimelech is also another point which would suggest that this is another Abimelech and not the one that Abraham met in Genesis 20. If this was the same Abimelech who took Sarah into his harem in Genesis 20, he would have remembered that Abraham had done a similar thing, but there's no indication that he knew of that incident. And because they valued marriage or held marriage in such a high esteem, notice what Abimelech charged his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So my point is that the Abimelech that Isaac met is not the same Abimelech that Abraham met in Genesis 20. Notice Genesis 26 verse 12. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold, and Jehovah blessed him. So remember we started in Genesis 26 verse 1 that there was a famine in the land. So even though there was a famine in the land, God's blessing was upon Isaac, and he was able to plant in the land of Canaan and reap, not next year, but in the same year 100-fold. And because God's blessing was upon him, Genesis 26 verse 13 tells us this. And the man waxed great, that's Isaac, and went forward and grew until he became very great, just like his father. For he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants. And as a result of God's blessing upon Isaac's life, the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. And Isaac departed thence, and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. So the Philistines were very envious of Isaac's wealth as a result of God's blessing. So they decided to stop his father's wells by filling them with dirt. And this was a breach of the covenant that Abraham established with Abimelech in Genesis chapter 21, the previous Abimelech. Notice what we are told in Genesis 21, verse 22 onwards, the covenant that Abraham, Isaac's father, made with Abimelech, which was the predecessor of this Abimelech that Isaac was now interacting with. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and this is also the name, titular name for the commander of Abimelech's army. Abimelech may very well have been the title for the kings of the Philistines, and Phicol was the name or the title for the chief captain of his army. So at that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son. But according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. So here, Abimelech the king was now saying to Abraham that Abraham should swear to him that he would not deal falsely with him, nor with Abimelech's son, nor with Abimelech's son's son. So here we can see that Abimelech's son, who more than likely is this Abimelech that Isaac was meeting, was being spoken of by his father to Abraham, and they made a covenant. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. So back in Abraham's time, there was a contention over wells as well. And we just read earlier that the Philistines, because of their envy of Isaac, they stopped the wells that Abraham's servants had dug. And here, Abraham was chastising or reproving Abimelech for his servants violently taking away a well of water, which Abraham's servant had done. And Abimelech said, I know not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Wherefore he called the place Beersheba, because there they swear both of them. So a covenant was already in place between Abimelech and Abraham. Notice verse 32. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. So let's now fast forward back to Genesis 26, verse 18. There was now going to be a quarrel over wells again. And Isaac digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. And he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, which means contention, because they strove with them. And they digged another well and strove for that also. And he called the name of it Sitnah, which means strife. So you can see that after they chased away Isaac, Isaac went into the valley of Gerar and he digged 2 wells. And the Philistines, because of their envy, strove with Isaac over these 2 wells, and they wanted to claim them as their own. And Isaac removed from thence and digged another well, and for that they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now Jehovah hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And Isaac went up from thence to Beersheba. So viewers, we're looking at the life of Isaac. So this is between 75 years old and 100 years old. So we're looking at the 25 years since Abraham's death that Isaac was living in the land of Canaan. He first dwelt in Gerar because of the famine. He was chased out of Gerar and he went to live in the valley of Gerar. and then he left from the valley of Gerar and he went up to Beersheba. So the Philistines were very antagonistic to Isaac while he dwelt in their land. And Jehovah appeared unto him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and I will bless thee and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And Isaac, just like his father before him, builded an altar there and called upon the name of Jehovah and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged a well. So whereas Abraham was known for his tents, Isaac was commonly known for the wells that he dug. So Isaac was known primarily for the many wells that he dug. And notice what happened. This Abimelech was now going to make a covenant with Isaac. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar. So he left from his own area, Gerar, and Ahuzath, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And this is the point that I was making. Here you can see that Abimelech, who was the king of Gerar, a Philistine king, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. Because remember, when you looked at Genesis 21, there was a man by the name of Abimelech, and there was also a man by the name of Phicol. And based on what I was saying, I spent much of this series trying to chart a timeline and to look at the various information that we have been given. This would not be the same Phicol and the same Abimelech that Abraham interacted with in Genesis 20 and Genesis 21. Here, we are seeing the same titles again, Abimelech and Phicol, which makes it clear that these are titular names for the king of Gerar, which is Abimelech, and the chief captain of his army was called Phicol. My personal name is Alric, but I may have a title that I can also be called by. And I gave the example of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was not their personal name. Pharaoh was a title for the kings of Egypt. So many years have passed since the Abimelech and the Phicol who interacted with Abraham to pass off the scene, just as how Abraham had passed off the scene. But here, in Isaac's lifetime, we are seeing the same names, Abimelech and Phicol. One was the king of Gerar, the other was the chief captain of his host. In today's dispensation, we might have, for example, the previous queen of England was called Elizabeth II because you had Elizabeth I before her. So Abimelech, who spoke to Abraham, could be called Abimelech I, and his son was now Abimelech II. So it was a title that the kings of the Philistines went by, Abimelech. Genesis 26 verse 27 says this. After they came to Isaac, Isaac said unto them, wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? And they said, we saw certainly that Jehovah was with thee. And we said, let there now be an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, similar to what the Abimelech in Genesis 21 did with Abraham, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of Jehovah. And Isaac made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning, that's early, and sware one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. So viewers, Isaac left because of the constant animosity with the Philistines, but Abimelech sought him out since they could clearly see God's blessing in Isaac's life. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, we have found water, which is the point that I'm making. Isaac was famous for the many wells that he dug, and he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is called Beersheba unto this day. And then there's now a transition which lets me know that Isaac was now 100 years old at the point of Genesis 26 verse 34, because the scripture tells us that Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beheri, the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac his father and to Rebekah. So Esau married 2 Hittite women when he was 40 years old, which means that Isaac was now 100 years old, since Esau was born when Isaac was 60 years old. So this is why I'm saying that Genesis chapter 26 covers the period of 25 years after the death of Abraham until Isaac was 100 years old. Because when Abraham died, Esau and Jacob were 15 years old, because Abraham died when Isaac was 75 years old. And Esau and Jacob were born when Isaac was 60 years old. So the twin boys were 15 years old. And here we are told in Genesis 26, verse 34, that Esau was now 40 years old. So 25 years have elapsed since the death of Abraham and the time now when Esau was 40 years old. So viewers, Esau married 2 Hittite women, and Hittites were Canaanites. Esau's action demonstrated that he was very rebellious by going against his parents' wishes. Why do I say this? Because remember, in Genesis 24, Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house that ruled over all that he had, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by Jehovah, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but thou shalt go unto my country and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. So viewers, in that culture, fathers were the ones who made arrangements for the marriages of their sons and their daughters. So Esau went against the established norm and decided to marry 2 Canaanite women because his father was the one who was supposed to arrange a marriage for him, just as how Abraham arranged a marriage for Isaac. Isaac was the one who was supposed to arrange a marriage for Esau and Jacob. So Esau's decision to marry Canaanite women was precisely why he was called a fornicator, because a fornicator is someone who engages in unlawful sexual relationship. And to marry a Canaanite, which was forbidden, was engaged in unlawful sexual union. And that is why he was called a fornicator and a profane person, an ungodly person, in Hebrews 12, verse 16. So viewers, there you have it. Genesis chapter 26, where we looked at the 25 years of Isaac's life after the death of his father Abraham until Esau was now 40 years old. We saw where Isaac was famous for the many wells that he dug, he and his servants. There was this constant contention between Isaac, because of the blessing of God upon his life, and the Philistines who envied him. Isaac departed from Gerar, and he went and he dwelt in Beersheba, which was in the southern region of Israel, the land of Canaan, the promised land at the time. And the chapter ends by looking at Esau and what Esau did, which resulted in him being called a fornicator and a profane person, because he married 2 Hittite women who were Canaanites, and they were a forbidden lineage. The children of Israel were not supposed to intermarry with the Canaanites. So this brings us to the end of Genesis chapter 26. In the next presentation on Genesis chapter 27, we will now look at the latter years of Isaac and Jacob stealing Esau's blessing. And we'll see what transpired in that encounter, where Rebekah, who knew what God told her, that the elder shall serve the younger, realized that Esau was going to go against what God had ordained and wanted to give Esau the blessing of the firstborn, the blessing of the birthright, even though God told Rebekah, which she clearly told Isaac, he wanted to violate God's word. And even though Rebekah went about it the wrong way, she still accomplished God's stated intention. And Jacob would now receive the patriarchal blessing, and Jacob would now become the head of the family. And all of that will be discussed as we look at Genesis chapter 27. Jacob steals Esau's blessing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And may God continue to bless us as we continue to delve in his word to prove all things. Have yourselves a great day.